Hello, welcome to another episode of the Project Purple podcast. I'm Dino Varelli, founder and CEO of Project Purple, and we have another interview for you coming up with a very special guest. But first, I just want to give you a quick update. At the time of this recording of this episode, we're rolling, literally, physically, into marathon season and also November, which is Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month. We've had runners either running, having just finished, or getting ready for races in Berlin, London, Twin Cities, Chicago, and New York City, and other events across the country. We also have gyms and group fitness teams hosting push-pull events and all sorts of other fundraisers. And I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone who's helping to spread awareness, raise funds, and help us fight for a world without pancreatic cancer. If you'd like to see how you can get involved, visit projectpurple.org and follow Project Purple on all social media channels. Without further ado, let's meet our special guest today on this episode of the Project Purple podcast. I am super excited to introduce our community and our audience here on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts to Mr. Ryan Welsh of our Welsh. I got to say that 10 times in a row, Ryan, right? R Welsh Coaching. I think I butchered it again because I have the Italian in me, like the S and the H go together. But Ryan Welsh of R Welsh Coaching, who's the founder, I'm excited to announce, man, you're going to be training our run teams here as we enter into the new year. So welcome to the Project Purple team as our endurance coach. Welcome to the Project Purple podcast. That was a mouthful. I've spoken a lot. I'm going to hand it over to Ryan.
No, well, it's great to be on. My instinct was about to be, great to meet you, except, Dino, we've known each other, I think, for 7 or 8 years now. And it's pretty special for me to begin working with some of the Project Purple athletes, considering my start in running, which I'm sure we'll get into on the podcast, was with this cause, was with this team, and, a fateful encounter with you. So it's pretty great now to be in a position to start giving back to some of the beginner runners and helping them on their journey to find meaning in their miles.
So it's pretty crazy, and I'm glad you bring that up. And so I'm super excited. I was driving in today, man, and this is, we're recording this. This is November 1st. This will air in a couple days. And, we're in Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month, right? And you think about impact. And I actually was on my run this morning. And, I always feel like a lot of pressure in November, right? Because the spotlight's on us, right? But I also feel that every day is like World Pancreatic Cancer Day. I come to work every day, like hammering, awareness for this disease. And I knew we had this podcast, and I was kind of thinking about this morning, man. And I was like, wow, man, like, yeah, what you just said kind of resonates with me. If you think about it, like, so we met, I think it was like the 2014 New York City half in the expo. Yep. And your mom had just recently gotten diagnosed. You were running for another group, or maybe you had your own entry, but then I saw you then that year at the full, stopped in Brooklyn, and you were running with Fred's team, and just like, everything that transpired. And it's just really wild, that now that, and I know before we hit record, we were just kind of catching up, just talking about, things here, how things have kind of exploded with people wanting to be engaged in community events and staffing and everything, and how, these are all great things, right? That coming out of the pandemic, that people want to get together, they want to raise awareness, they want to do these things. And it's just wild because you think about like how we interacted and how we connected was through a community event. And, for our audience listening at home, I'm not trying to get religious or, throw anything into anyone, but it's just kind of wild how sometimes, whether there's a higher calling, whatever you believe in, the stars align. But, to meet a complete stranger, right, at the New York City Half Expo, in 14, and then to see you out on the course there at the full, and then to have you be part of the community over the years. And I don't want to steal your thunder, but then to see like we're this, and I've talked about this on the podcast, like sometimes there's this arch or arc that people are on, right? This journey in life, and you have to go through these certain things to get to this end result, which is not the end, but like where we are today. So it's just kind of really powerful for me to kind of see that with your journey, and you and I become friends. Like we ran into each other in Chicago a couple years, last year, right? Or the year before.
Yeah, right. Yeah. At a restaurant. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like I had my back and you walked by me in the hotel and, so like there's these little things that happen, man, in life that, I'm going to jump off the reminiscing trail here, or the reminiscing bus, and talk a little bit more about your background, and super excited to have you on with us now, as part of the team, helping, like you said, helping our runners, reach their goals and get there. So before we get to that, let's talk about your background, because you've got an amazing story, and I know we just teased a bunch of it, but let's get the audience to kind of make sense and hear more about it, Ryan.
Yeah. So, grew up in the Princeton, New Jersey area. Two parents that were high school teachers, coaches. So grew up in a household where academics were really important, and also playing youth sports was really important. Grew up as a football player, basketball player, ended up going down to college in Virginia at Washington and Lee University, a small Division III college, where I went on and played 4 years of college football, and graduated in 2010 and was getting ready to kind of like start my I'll call it my real life, my adult life, coming back to the Jersey area, plans to work in finance in New York. And kind of all of that hit like a screeching halt for me. And it was the summer right after I had graduated college. I had the unfortunate circumstance that my father had taken his own life. And that was something that hit me, like nothing had ever hit me before. And I know some of the people that listen to this pod, I'm sure have dealt with hard news before. And being 22 years old and having that first, bout of like really, really hard news, the finality of losing someone, it was tough on me, and it was brutal, and going through that transition into adult life and my first, career sort of job, trying to make all the pieces fit together, and asking a lot of questions of why and how did that all happen. It was a tough, I would say 2 to 3 year stretch for me, but in that time, my mom became like the person that I leaned on most. I'm trying to figure out how to carve out my niche in the world, make it in a job, going through the hardship of, failed relationships and, new friendships and, new hobbies and whatnot. And it was actually, during that time, that I got into mixed martial arts fighting. So for 2 years, I was doing amateur mixed martial arts fighting. A lot of my friends would say it was just because I was very frustrated and wanted to find an outlet. And I finally gave that up because I was going into like a banking style job in New York with black eyes here and there. So it was, I started to realize it probably wasn't a good look for my career. But through all of that, I was finally kind of growing as a young man and a young adult, and really leaning on my mom as kind of the number one person for guidance in my young life. And it was then, early 2014 that, kind of transitioning to a bit of what Dino was talking about. We got hit with the news that, something had showed up on a scan after she had gone and seen, a couple different doctors for some, digestive issues, some, abdomen pain. Eventually, a scan showed something that landed her suddenly, in Memorial Sloan Kettering. And that's where, again, when you're young and you're not exposed to this stuff, and it's new to just your family in general, you're asking all sorts of questions. What do you mean something showed up on a scan? What do you mean we're getting checked into this huge cancer center? What is a biopsy? What deems results to be conclusive? When do you get a diagnosis? If you get a diagnosis, what does all the staging mean? And, it was a few days later that we understood that, she was being diagnosed with stage 3 pancreatic cancer. And, to me, and I've kind of, I think I've told Dino this before. It was like, at first I was like, you see, I don't know, the shit on the movies and whatnot of like, oh, people battle cancer, they beat it. Or you hear about celebrities and athletes and all these like stories of overcoming, right? Of people, beating this, and, people saying it's all about, mentally how you approach it and everything. And I thought I was like, we're going to like beat this thing. I don't know anything about pancreatic cancer, but we're going to beat this thing. And to be honest, I remember, going for a little walk after, 2 days at Sloan and Googling pancreatic cancer staging, survival rates. And like, I almost like dropped to my knees when it was like stage 3 survival rate beyond 5 years was, and Dina, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's probably like 3 or 4%. And it tore me up, to think like, whoa, like, this isn't like, I thought anything less than 50% was going to like shock me. And this was less than 5%. So that took me down a rabbit hole of many days of like Googling more about it and trying to understand more. And it was around that time that I was like, I just need to go freaking do something, and, signed up to do a half marathon. And that's, the story Dino was telling of, I walked into this expo and it was like something was like calling to me. I see this table, running to beat pancreatic cancer. And I was like, I went over and I started talking to Dino and I got all choked up. And, I was just, a guy that didn't even know what I didn't know at that point. I was asking him a lot of questions about the doctors and the procedures and the chemotherapy and, the outlook and all this stuff. And, we were really just connecting over trying to, navigate the resources and getting oriented to, just how hard it is having a loved one go through all of this. And for context, the reason I decided to even start running was my mom historically had always been a runner, half marathons, things like that. I always thought she was crazy. I thought it was like, why would anyone just go jog, for fun? How is that enjoyable? I never ever wanted to do it. I think before I ran that first half marathon, before I started training for that one, I had never run more than 3 miles in my entire life. Like, was like, no, this is just not for me. But suddenly like just found myself drawn to really initially the stress relief that I was getting from just going out and running. And, with, having the context of my father being gone and my mom going through the battle of her life. I have 2 sisters as well, but I definitely felt this pressure to step up and be the person that my mom could lean on and that would go with her to all her appointments and her chemotherapy sessions. And, it was a lot, and it was, waning on me, and running became like this number one outlet for me to just let the stress of my day and all the pressure drip off of me and to kind of collect my thoughts on everything that was going on in my life. And, as Dino had mentioned, I ended up parlaying that into, somehow deciding to run a marathon. And that was, in that marathon in Brooklyn, I ended up seeing him on the side of the street. And so that first one I was running with Fred's team, but, I saw him on the side of the street and I ran over, and I had hugged him, and, it was a great moment. And after that marathon, like I was pretty hooked on, just, not just the running piece, being a stress reliever for me, but making my miles meaningful and kind of getting to a point where, putting my story out there and raising money, and getting involved in more races. And, so yeah, over time, I think, I ended up, running Chicago with you guys, and Boston. And another New York. And we ended up out in Napa one year doing Napa
that's
to
right.
Sonoma.
Napa to Sonoma. I forget about that one. Yeah.
Yep. I obviously I continued on with the running stuff. Unfortunately, my mom had eventually passed away from pancreatic cancer. But I kind of felt like a little bit of this carrying on her legacy through running and through continuing to make my miles meaningful and through, continuing to ensure that her story and her memory would continue to be told and continue to be at the heart of everything I do that's active in the world of running. And eventually I ended up taking running a lot more serious than I originally thought, and started training pretty hard, joined a track club in New York. It ended up faithfully being the place that I met my wife, who I always like to tell Dino is much more talented runner than I am even. Just over time ended up running 7 full marathons, 5 half marathons. I've done 6 triathlons, 2 half Ironmans. Just absolutely love what the sport has given me. But over the, last few years, I've kind of, as I would say, become an old man in the sport, and my body had started to get beaten up, and I started to take, an acute interest in other people's training and helping other people, and particularly, people that were newer to the sport like I once was, and they were just trying to figure out, how to build foundational fitness, get themselves ready for any sort of race. And, from there started to build out, this coaching thing. So I know that was a mouthful, but I wanted to give the full story. And we can get into some other details if you'd like.
Yeah. I'm going to rewind a little bit and ask this question. So, I know, we've been friends since that original, and I consider you a friend since the very beginning because of that connection, right? And those that know get that, and those that don't, well, I don't know how to help you there. So we've been friends and following your journey and everything. And I know when you got like really serious into the running, with the I think it was the Brooklyn Track Club, right? I think it was Brooklyn, right? Just give props to them. And, you're following people's Stravas, right? Like you see all the data, and you were ripping it off, man, like really, really going at it. And so, and you kind of, I know you mentioned this, but you meet your wife, right? Love of your life, and you guys get married, and your brother-in-law's run for us, right? And so, just this whole thing. So I got to ask you this question. Which probably the audience is thinking about this. But so like running, you mentioned, you turned to running, hated running before your mom gets diagnosed, you turn to the running, you find how this positive thing is, but then you look back and like, have you ever thought, and this is like the question that comes to my mind is like, if that never happened and you never ran, like, would you, like your wife, all the amazing relationships that you've built, through the years, the community, I know you were very involved in the Brooklyn. Now what you're doing now, you started, I know we haven't even talked about this, but you've got the Red Bank, run club there in Jersey, right? So like, you've got all these like amazing things, man. And like, do you ever sit back and think like, what if like none of this ever happened?
No, it's actually at our wedding. My uncle gave a speech at the rehearsal dinner, and he had kind of, gotten a little bit into our story of meeting and everything. And he wanted to, ensure that, everyone remembered, my parents and everything. And he pointed out kind of exactly what you were talking about, the way that fate aligns on things. And he was like, think about this, like everyone has had a couple laughs about how they can't believe you got so into running, right? But as we all kind of know, you would have never probably gotten as serious into it or even into it at all had your mom not gotten sick, right? Like you decided to do that because you needed it as a stress reliever. And you probably would have never signed up for that first marathon. And if you didn't do that, you wouldn't have gotten so heavily involved in running, and it probably would have meant that you would have never shown up to that first day at that run club, that track club, because you were looking for, okay, now I'm taking this more serious. I want to find a group of people to run with, which means you would have never met your wife. And also, Chris Chavez, who was officiating our wedding. Kara and I then met him through the run club. So, all these other people that started to come into my life, and landing down here in Red Bank and starting our own run club down here now. And we've already, met a ton of great people and friends. It's crazy that it is, become like such a central point of my life outside of like work and everything. And, it's funny because like I think sometimes when people like you get in a setting and be like, what's a fun fact about you, like, or what's a whatever, and I feel like it's so cliche to say, like, what's something you really like. Well, I really like running, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, and it's like, no, but if you really know like how much it's meant to me and how much it's impacted my life and the relationships in my life and the stuff that I do outside of work. It's really just a wonderful thing. And even like you were saying, like, now getting into the coaching stuff of it, it's just like funny to like think about like Chicago Marathon. I had a couple athletes running it. We obviously, like, my wife and I weren't able to be out there, but we're sitting, in our living room at 7 a.m. drinking coffee, refreshing the Chicago Marathon app, and I'm jumping up and down at people's like splits through 5K, 10K and everything. And it's just like, it's funny to think like, you rewind 10 years ago, like I wouldn't have thought I'd be doing any of this in my first house that I bought.
So wild, man. And I guess my next question, and this is a loaded question. I have so many loaded questions, I guess, on this podcast, and the question has come to me often. Do you ever look at, and I don't mean this in any disrespect, Ryan, do you ever look at losing your mom as a gift? The gift that provided you everything that we just talked about, your wife, running, this community, the communities you have built. And what I mean by that is, and I've heard this and read this, like, right, like you have to go through such an immense pain and such tragedy to gain such a powerful thing in your life or things in your life, right? Like, yeah. If that didn't happen, like, who knows, right?
Yeah. It's, like, I think when you've gone through, a really tough loss, and for me, it's happened twice with both my parents. And I think like to truly overcome, you've got to be able to find, silver linings in that sort of tragedy. And when you're in that sort of rut or that sort of ditch and you're trying to climb your way out and you're sitting there looking at how far you've got to climb to get yourself and your family and everyone out of like that low of like, the depths of grief. And, like my friends actually have like joked with me because they like can't believe like all this, like you had said, all the things that I've turned into a positive and spun into a positive in my life out of this. They were like, man, like you could have had every excuse to not do well. Right. Like, and to just like you could have gone down a path and I don't think anyone would have like been surprised or like, mad at you. Like if you had gone down a path where you stopped caring about the relationships in your life and you were really angry at people and, like God forbid you ended up like leaning on drugs or alcohol, like that has happened to people because of things you have gone through. And to be able to find silver linings and find, the positives and the gifts in what has happened. You've got to like kind of like mentally wrap your head around like an ability to overcome by looking at those positives. But, I'll admit, and I think, too, it's hard to find them right away. And, I think like at first when you're sitting in that depths of despair and frustration, it's hard to think that anything positive could come of this. But, I think just like that mindset of trying to like slowly get out of that place, and then being open to, the great things that can come into your life afterwards. I think that's important. And So it is a little crazy. The fact that I think like some of the silver linings of this have completely changed the entire trajectory of my life. And I think that, my mom would look at that and smile and be happy that this is kind of the life and the path that I've chosen, and that a lot of it is because of the legacy she left. But, I can't lie. It is a little hard when, here and there, my wife, Kara, will, someone will say something about my mom or show us a picture. And the fact that like everyone, knows like she came into my life after she came into my life. We met through running. I hated running until, my mom got sick. And sometimes it's hard for her that like, she's like, I never got to be a part of that part of your life, right? When your mom was here. And I always hear about how special she is and how, the way you've carried yourself afterwards is because of her. And I think it's really neat. And it's, like for her, sometimes it's almost tougher that she never got to meet that person. And, it definitely, carries on in our lives and our relationships. I wish she could have met her, but like you had said, there's maybe a chance that Kara and I would have never met.
Yeah.
It is a wild, wild world.
So special, man, that you're able to provide that insight. And I can't echo that sentiment more. And I think something that you just said is just so powerful. And I think as society, we are always looking for the quick fix, like to fix everything overnight. But to your point, as you said, it's like these small incremental positive things, like as bad as things are, like you got to look and you got to fight for those little positives, right? It's not going to change overnight. It's going to take time, but if you stay on track and you keep working towards those positives, eventually, you will find that, and you got to work towards that. And that's the big thing. And like, to your point is like, hey, you could have easily gone down that road of substance abuse, alcohol, but you decided not to. And that's a small choice or a big choice, but a small decision not to do that. But that's one of those things, right? So that was so powerful. And I now want to shift gears because we want to talk about running and coaching and people in our community here. And we're not going to dive in deep into training, but like the number one question is like, how do people get started? Right. I think that'd be a great place to start. And clearly there's people of all walks, all different lives, all different activity lifestyles. So let's just, for this purpose of this round, someone who's never run anything before, Ryan, how do they get started? How do we get them off the couch to like, a half marathon or 5K or 10K?
Yeah. So I would think about it in three components. And the first is, what's your why? And for the purposes of Project Purple, I think, a lot of people sign up for Project Purple, they have a very serious, very, focused why. But for a lot of people, in all walks of life, it's different, right? Like if you're thinking about starting an exercise routine, you're thinking about running, you're thinking about signing up for a race, there's usually like an inflection point that you can remember where you were like, man, I really gotta do something. I really want to get up off the couch and get out there. And for some people, it might be weight loss. For some people, it might be, like I was saying originally, stress relief. For other people, it might just be they want to, change the accountability in their routine. But everyone has a specific inflection point where this thing goes off in their head and they say, I don't know, next week, tomorrow, whatever it is, like, I got to get out that door. I want to do this. I want to start a new routine, and any sort of net new routine, especially one that is exercise related, is hard to do because it inherently puts additional stress on your body. But I tend to think like if you can continue to come back to that why, that original moment that you had said, I want to get out the door, I want to do this, I want to feel better, I want to feel different. It can give you power. It can, propel you. And for some people, I tell them, like if it's not enough to always like think about it, write it down and put it somewhere. Put it on your fridge, put it on your bathroom mirror. I joke with people, like when I first started, I wrote it down and I put it on my monitor in my office, in downtown Manhattan. Cause that was back when everyone went to an office every day. Right. And I always like to try to like, ensure I would get out the door, and do it after work. And so then the next suggestion would be, if you're starting something new, like running or exercise, have a plan and try to stick to it. And when I say like, have a plan, especially like early on, doesn't need to be like, hey, I'm going to plan out the next 2 months of my life and, whatever. Like we know things get in the way. We know priorities change. But I like to think that by Sunday night of any given week, you have a pretty good idea of where you're going to be at what times, what your commitments are, whether it's with your kids, with your job, with your social life, from Monday through Saturday of that week. And so sitting down on Sunday night and making a commitment to what I'm going to do, when, where, for how long, and recording it somewhere. Like you can do it in Google Sheets. You can do it in the Notes app on your phone. I mean, like sometimes I'm like on the fly, and I used to be like taking the subway into work on a Monday morning. I'd be in my Notes app, and I would just be like this would be like my sixth iteration of like this week, like Monday, 6 to 7 p.m., West Side Highway, 4 miles, like whatever it is, right? And just like having the accountability to commit to when and where you're going to do it. And again, for a lot of folks, if you have kids, right, the scheduling and sequencing might feel or look a little different. If you work from home, it might be like a noon to 1 p.m. or it might be like a 6 to 7 p.m. one day, or it might be a 7 to 8 p.m. I actually had a friend who has 3 kids and he's training for a half Ironman right now. And he said he does a lot of his running at night. And of course, it's dark out. He can't bike when it's dark out, and obviously can't go to the pool when it's closed. But he was like, I started to realize the 7 to 8 p.m. hour, that's the dad's running hour. He's like, I always see a lot of dads out there because it's like they've just put the kids to sleep. They're getting out there and showing that level of accountability. So I think, making a plan, committing to it, sticking to it, and just making that plan 4 to 5 days out. And when you do that, I like to think about judging your progress in 3-week increments. So again, back to your point about, when I was, stricken with grief and, feeling like I needed to like come out of that, like trying to like expect yourself to feel immediately better one day later is not going to happen. And it's same with exercise or running. I actually tell people it's sometimes like when they're trying to understand like, well, running is hard or exercise is hard, and everyone wants to see results immediately, and you're not going to see it like day one, probably not after even week one. I like to think that it's kind of similar and comparable to when you start a new job. And I think like anyone that's listening has probably at some point started a new job, even your first job, right? And that, it's really scary day one to start something new where you don't know everyone and you don't know how to do the job. And then by end of week one, you feel like you're there and you know everyone and you've got a little bit of a routine, but you're still like, I don't feel comfortable just yet. And then week 2 happens, and then week 3 happens. And usually people will say, by the end of week 3 or 4, like you look back and you're like, okay, I feel like I work here now. I come in at this time, I get my coffee, I do this from this time, I got my meetings set, I've got a predictability around my schedule, right? So exercise can kind of be like starting a new job in that, like that first week, it's going to be, there's a little anxiety, a little nervousness. It's a lot of it is going to be completely new for your body. So it might not feel normal. And week 2 there's going to be a little bit more of the same, but I tend to think by the end of 3 or 4 weeks, most people will feel a measurable change in the way they feel, the level of ease that they're able to embark on, whatever it is that they're doing exercise wise. So being able to have a plan, commit to it week to week. Don't rush to judge your progress after just a couple days or just a week, but start to think about your progress after 3 weeks if you have demonstrated a level of accountability throughout those 3 weeks to do what you've committed to. And then the last thing is just like try to keep it fresh and try to keep it interesting. And by that, I mean, a few ideas here, right? Like first and foremost, if it's completely net new to you and you kind of want to just like build out a base level of fitness or whatever it is on your own, you don't have to just go out and run. Walking is fine too. Walking to start is totally okay, and it is definitely in my book considered exercise. And when you do that, I think like a great thing to do is your watch or your phone or whatever can track your steps, right? And try to say like, hey, today I want to get 8,000 steps in. I want to get 10,000 steps in. I want to do a little more tomorrow. And I think that's a great starting point is walking. If you're just going from the couch to outside, like walking and tracking your steps and incrementally adding steps is a really good starting point. From there, you can start to phase in small little pickups. And, for very serious runners, like a fartlek is kind of like a hard workout, but actually for beginners, it's a really good thing too, because a fartlek, an example would be, you say you're going to go out for 30 minutes and what you're going to do is you're just going to jog for 1 minute and then you're going to walk for 1 minute and you're going to jog for 1 minute and you're going to walk for 1 minute and you're going to do this till you get to 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And for a lot of people, that's a great entryway into jogging. If you've started to build up a base of walking, it's also just a fun way to mentally get past the miles, without thinking about, well, like what, how many miles have I gone? It's more just like, get through this minute, get through this minute, get through this minute. And then, again, when I was saying, try to keep it fresh, keep it interesting, keep it fun. In most communities, I would bet my bottom dollar that you can find a run club. And when I say like find a run club, like it is not like this serious, crazy, it's going to be so intimidating. An example, this Red Bank Run Club group we've started, we meet every Wednesday at 6 p.m. at a bar. We go out for a jog. There's a 3-mile group and a 5-mile group. I would say 90% of the people do the 3-mile group. And they all rush back to the bar, grab a beer, and everyone catches up and talks. And it's a great way to meet people, to be, part of the community a little more, and to like make the miles go by with a little more ease. And the great thing too is that like a lot of the people that have met each other at the run club at varying levels of fitness or expertise or experience then connect and are like, hey, wait, you're training for the New York City Marathon too? Oh, like I've got a 15-miler I want to do this Saturday. Should we go do it? And then the other end of the spectrum is like there's, some young like new moms who are just getting back into jogging who are like, hey, like I was just going to do like 3 miles with the stroller this Saturday and get coffee. Like, would you also want to come? And, a couple folks will get together and do stuff like that on their own time. So, by keeping it interesting, keeping it fresh, there's always small run groups in, I think, every pocket of the country where you can find other people that are, just looking to have fun with their miles. And if there somehow isn't, you could be like me and just, start one in your local town. Bars love to have people come, especially on Wednesdays or Thursdays. Coffee shops love to host groups for mornings on the weekends or even weekdays. So that is a great starting point if you're thinking about, let me try to get a run group together. Again, you've got social media and you've got bars and coffee shops are always willing to host people to drive business there.
I love it, man. Some great stuff there. So, I'm excited. This is awesome, man. And I think, the one that resonated me the most, just me personally, is the planning, right? If you don't have a plan, you fail, right? And so that's just anything that you want to achieve in life, whether it's running, work, family, life. If you don't have a plan, you're going to fail. So, whatever you are looking to achieve. So great stuff there, Ryan. I've got one last question, and then we're going to share with our audience where they can learn more, maybe learn more about the run club there in Red Bank. I wish you were closer. I'd love to go and grab a beer on a Wednesday night.
Yeah.
But so before we get there, this is pertinent to you, and this is a loaded question, as most of mine are. This is also probably our most popular question, and given your experience, because you've had experience with it, this isn't related to coaching or anything, but it could be, I guess. How do you define the word pancreatic cancer? In your experience, your life, what's your definition of it?
Oh man, that's a really hard question, because I think that there's, obviously knowing my story, there's varying levels of how I've felt about this disease, and where it has taken me to, like I said, the depths of despair, and then coming out of it and putting my life on a completely different trajectory. So I would say that toughness is how I would define it, because the people that have gone through that diagnosis, the people that have gone through the treatment, and then also folks like us who have kind of been on these different layers of being involved on the periphery and watching loved ones go through it. I feel like there is a level of toughness and grittiness that when I meet someone that's like, yeah, my dad just went through this, or I lost a loved one to it, 10 years ago. There's like this look that, you can kind of tell, like, this person's tough as fucking hell. Like, and I know that whatever their loved one went through, whether they survived it or didn't survive it, that they demonstrated the utmost grit in going through what they went through in chemotherapy and surgeries and endless levels of doctor's appointments. So yeah, I think there's just like everyone that's in this. Someone had told me this when my mom had gotten diagnosed, and his wife was going through ovarian cancer at the time. And he could sense, how upset I was over all of it. And he like gave me a hug and kind of laughed with me and said, it's weird because now you're in this fraternity that I've been in for a while. And there's other people that I meet in my life that become very important who are also in this fraternity. And I'm laughing with you because now you and I are about to share a bond that we probably hadn't gone that level to before, because you're in this fraternity that nobody wants to be in, by the way. But the fact that we're in this fraternity that people don't want to be in, we know that we can lean on each other and depend on each other. And I always think about that moment when I hear of another friend that has a loved one that's going through something. And particularly, you've met my friend Drew Cologne, who ran Chicago with you last year. And Drew and I got so much closer, when his dad was going through everything. And, just the level of toughness that I watched Drew exhibit, a guy who never, ever, ever, ever would have wanted to run, goes out there, runs Chicago, and just said like he had to do it. That's what he told me. He's like, I have to do this for my dad. So when I think about the definition of pancreatic cancer, sure, some of the statistics aren't great, and some of the stories that people have are tough to hear. But I think that most of the people that are involved on the periphery of this disease are tough as hell. The most mentally tough people that I've come across. And I think that there is, a level of pride in that, being in this fraternity within the fraternity of cancer, that there is just, to me, a culture of grittiness with the people that have been around this specific cancer.
It's powerful stuff, man. You couldn't have said it. It was awesome. There's no right or wrong to that. And I just love hearing different people's perspective and how they go down this journey and how they define it. Because it's powerful. This is what we're sharing, and we're sharing for the people that are listening, that maybe get diagnosed and they hear that, maybe that's that one piece this week to get them through this week, right? To keep them going. So it's awesome. All right. Last thing here, audience listening. Well, I'm going to preface it this before we let you say what you're going to say. If you want Ryan to coach you, you got to join a Project Purple team.
Yeah,
selfishly,
yeah.
Right?
And I'd say, listen, I know today we just touched on some of the beginner get off the couch running tips. But I coach people of all levels, people that are just trying to run their first 5K or their first half marathon, people that are trying to run their first marathon, all the way up to, people that are trying to Boston qualify, run very, very fast marathons, and then everything in between, goals all over the spectrum. So happy to help you on your journey. I would say that even more than my own achievements in running, I get a special sort of gratification when I see other people achieve what they want to achieve, especially the people that'll tell me, a year ago, I would have never thought this was possible. And now I'm doing it. And I think that's a special transition for anyone. And most specifically, those people that I'm talking about, those tough as nails people that are going through something and using running and Project Purple as their outlet.
It's awesome. So you'll be coaching all our 23 teams with the New York City half, which we haven't, I guess we are publicly announcing it right now. Our London Marathon, our we haven't finalized some deals, so I won't mention some names, but Berlin, Chicago, and then we'll be back in New York City for the full for 2023, right? So all these great races plus many more. So that's the first place, but clearly, if someone's out there, Ryan, maybe they live in the Red Bank area and they want to come and meet with you, with your group, or someone lives out in California and they just love what you had to say and they want to work with you, where's the best place for people to connect with you? On social media, email, website? Where's that place?
Yeah. So email is a great starting point. I'm at rwelsh12@gmail. That's rwelsh12@gmail.com. On Instagram, you can find me at r_Welsh coaching. And then if you are in the Jersey area and want to stop by the Run Club and have some fun with us, you can follow us at Red Bank Run Club on Instagram. We post weekly meetups, runs, and actually, I was going to say, we're the group is so social that now we're starting to schedule non-running events, just people getting together for Friday happy hours and stuff. So if you're looking to meet people, you're new to the area, whatever it is, you can feel free to reach out to our Run Club and come join us for anything.
Awesome. Ryan, thank you for all you'll be doing for Project Purple, and thank you for being a guest on the Project Purple podcast.
Thanks, Dino. I'm so excited to begin working with everyone.
Awesome. Thank you for listening and watching to another episode of the Project Purple podcast. If you like this episode, feel free to share this episode wherever you listen to podcasts. And please make sure to follow us on our YouTube channel and also follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. Till next time, please be safe. And that's a wrap of another episode of the Project Purple podcast.